What's up, everyone? You got the heavy metal panel here. It's heavy metal forging the future of genre. You have my partner, publisher, and chief creative overlord at heavy metal, David Erwin. You have Dylan Sprouse, George Romero, Brendan Columbus, and Dan Fogler. What's up, everyone?
How you
doing, Matt?
So I guess we'll start with how this was supposed to be something that we were planning to do in person at Comic-Con this year. Something I know at least Fogler and George, and I think probably everyone on here, we all talked about sometime in January, February. So I guess the silver lining is it's cool that we're still able to do it. But it's
structure probably smells a lot better, I imagine. Just looking at this group, I imagine it
doesn't smell better in my square.
We should have all cosplayed as each other.
I bet Dan could have just dyed the beard a little bit, shaved the head, look just like George.
Oh, Dan. We're old. We're old.
But no, I mean we're coordinating. I think just 3 time zones right now, which is pretty cool. We have Dan, you're in London, I believe, still.
Yes,
and
sir.
then George and David are East Coast time, and then Dylan, myself, and Brendan are all LA. So it is cool though that we're able to make this happen across different time zones and countries. Pretty dope. But yeah, let's kind of dive into it. I want to start with I know we started with Dan last time, but I mean every day your story just seems more and more real. And with both Fishkill, Brooklyn Gladiator, and Moonlake, and with Dylan's Sun Eater, they were all supposed to launch at Comic-Con this year. So yeah. I would love to kind of just get everyone's thoughts on how are you guys kind of dealing with the fact that this pandemic and world kind of dynamic is happening, but also do you feel any sort of solace in the fact that even through all this we're still able to share the visions that we've all created with everyone, because that is in and of itself still kind of a blessing during these crazy times, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is cool because I feel like we're being naughty, It's like they shut us down, they told us that we couldn't do it, and here we are, we're still going. And I appreciate the rock and roll aspect of that. But man, Comic-Con, yeah, this is a sign of the times. Like hopefully we'll all be able to have a Comic-Con again and all be together, and and the rules won't feel so Orwellian, and I really hope that we can do that. But at this point, it doesn't look like it, does it? It's kind of freaky where we're at right now, this crossroads, and all of my books, Moonlake included, which is literally a crossroads of many different brands of haunted evil goodness, and Brooklyn Gladiator and Fishkill. I mean, Brooklyn Gladiator is a cautionary tale, and I was about what might happen to us, but while I was writing it, I was like, oh my God, this is happening to us, and then that's why I said, well, I should write about what's happening right now, shouldn't I? It's my obligation, as a citizen of this earth, to comment on what I'm seeing. And so I started writing Fishkill, which takes place right now. And it's strange, the Mayan calendar. It's like the Mayan calendar, they say the shift that they actually, because of the Gregorian calendar, they mixed the Mayans were off, or they were on and we were off. And it's actually the shift of consciousness is tomorrow. It's the
shit.
It's like this week.
Glad we did this today.
I don't know. Dan, maybe you should be writing a story that has a light at the end of the tunnel. And by the time it's published,
I know.
then suddenly conventions are everywhere and people are
Maybe you're
partying
the
again.
prophet. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree
maybe
with
that's
David. You should just write something positive.
Yeah, maybe whatever you're writing is actually going to happen. Maybe you're that guy now.
Yeah.
Damn, man, that's not fun though.
But just as a general question, what does this shift of consciousness really mean for us?
Well, what does it mean for us?
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Am I gonna
a lot of people
start buying lottery cards or something?
Well, it certainly doesn't mean it's not the end of the world. It's going to be a global shift in thinking. And doesn't it seem like that's happening?
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
it kind of seems accurate.
Yeah.
At least on the people still really like to read. So I think that regardless of whether or not this is over the web or in person, I think people are still going to like comics. So I don't think that's going out with a consciousness shift, at least.
No, I think if anything, people are going to look to comic books to try and find some reason and some logic to what's happening right now. You know,
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that, I mean, kind of going back to the way that we used to look at comics when we were kids?
Yeah.
Well, with George, your mantra, films used to be dangerous, right? I mean, similarly, comics had a way about them that gave you that reflective nature as to how you might want to rethink the way you do things, right? You read a story and you're like, huh, that's some perspective that slaps you across the face in a way that you might not have gotten anywhere else.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to the way heroes and villains were portrayed when I was a kid, and it was an opportunity for writers, for authors to put kind of world views into characters that everybody from kids to grownups could identify with, which goes back to one of the early conversations that David and I had about character development. And one of my favorite conversations about character development I've ever had with anybody. And, by putting messaging into characters that I think we look to almost as role models growing up one way or another, it helped form our ability as a generation to have what our parents might have called dangerous thoughts, right? Thoughts outside the box, thoughts that went against the grain and against the norm and against what people wanted us to think. And that's what created a generation that started challenging the system. And now look where that's grown. And I believe that has all grown out of art. Dan, you said in the beginning, you said this makes you feel naughty, like we're breaking rules, but art always finds a way, and art leads the pack when it comes to the shift, when it comes to every shift we've experienced in my lifetime. And it all stems from some form of art, whether it's writing, whether it's film, whether it's painting, whatever it is. Radical thought comes out of the art community, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. Who here has seen Chappelle's 846?
Oh yeah.
So that is to George's point, breaking the mold, right? In so many ways. Not only was that not comedy, it was more preaching, but it also was something that both Dave and Netflix as a whole thought the world needed to hear without a paywall. So if you notice, it's actually not on Netflix. It's only on their YouTube, where everybody can just consume it for free. And I think that goes exactly to what you were just saying, George, which is art. I think with capitalism, in a sense, sometimes art has gotten confused with business, and there needs to be a shift where obviously everyone needs to create the right balance between stability and art. But I think that balance got a little too skewed, and we're seeing some of the repercussions of not having unfiltered, ungarnished art anymore.
That's right. I
think that there's definitely a bit of a responsibility as a writer to, whether consciously or subconsciously, kind of document or record the understanding of our times as almost like a period piece, right? I think that, looking back the same way that we're looking at comics, from the 70s or 80s, like you were saying, George, I think it's easy to look back on that and kind of pull apart and read between the lines and see exactly what people were about back then. And whether it's subconscious or conscious, I think that there is a bit of a responsibility as a writer to document that or kind of keep that thought alive. At least in my opinion, I don't know. I find that more rewarding. And I think, like you're saying, the role of the artist has always kind of been predominantly that to a degree.
Mm-hmm. I believe that the responsibility as the writer, right? And I agree with you 100%. We have a responsibility. I believe the responsibility is to stay true to as objective a perspective. That's a mouthful, but as objective of a point of view as we possibly can, because it's the only way we can stay true as a writer to writing about things that are affecting the world. Anyway.
And there's so much censorship now, and there's, the thought police are out. So, I mean, it's our job to.
The thought police are out.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that Matt and I have talked about, when we go around and have these different meetings and so forth, and even with you guys, is that what perfect timing for heavy metal, right? Because we are willing to take those risks. Other publishers aren't willing to do that. And then you know what the Hollywood system is like, and it's all about placating to really the masses. And then things are becoming more and more vanilla. And, but heavy metal is, I refer to as, we're the Ben and Jerry's, right? You're not just going to get your vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. We got everything. We got the craziest shit.
Right? That's the thing. Some things aren't for you, and some other things are. I think that's a fantastic point, David, is that not everything needs to be for everyone. And that idea that's kind of infected our society, that everything should be palatable for everyone, I think is as dangerous as misinformation.
Yeah, and because heavy metal's always been in when it first came out, was always the publisher that introduced new voices that we never had experienced before, right? I mean, you got French, Mobius, and you got the Spaniards, and you got all of these things, and it kind of lost its way. And am I having you guys, each of you, with a different, unique perspective, a unique voice that is truly your own voice? This, our magazine becomes that platform. Our publishing house becomes that platform to be able to share those voices on a bigger scale and a bigger level, and really to the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sorry, I muted myself because one of the benefits of doing this remotely is that the recycling guys really like to make it sound like Voltron is forming when they take the recycling away, and it is not something for you guys to.
We got a special guest on the panel.
Yes, exactly. But no, I couldn't agree more with that, David. I think it's I think that is at the heart what all art really should be, is the introduction of something that other people haven't seen yet, to provide a new perspective on an old idea. Right?
But also, it's unexpected. Heavy metal, I mean, the best storytelling is usually the unexpected. And, who would expect Dylan Sprouse to be writing, be such a serious, heady writer? Yeah. I mean, look at him. Does he look like a writer who has...
Come on. Where's your writer's beard?
Damn it.
Too soon.
And then George, George in his sound room, doing his podcast in the middle of America, Tennessee somewhere. And
this is turned into a roast.
Right.
I'm actually on a horse right now.
No, but and then same with and Brendan. I mean, we're introducing a new talent with Brendan. So again, and of course, Dan speaks for himself, but
Jody, not Dan. Dan's not here.
Jody. But the point is that this is what I think makes heavy metal exciting, right? Bringing in these different personalities that and taking risk and taking chances, but for us, we don't look at it as taking chances. I mean, because we have we have such respect for what you guys are bringing to the table. but it gives an opportunity to be able to share it with people who normally wouldn't associate you guys as being writers or creatives and such.
Now, on that, I want to dive into Savage Circus for just a quick second. So, while this comes out, I don't think the story will have been published yet because of the timing. But to get people excited, why? Because when they see the first chapter, when they see the first chapter, their question is going to be why? Why? Brent?
Why? Well, the main reason I think is I wanted to see people get torn apart by animals. That's the why. I'm like, yeah, that's the easiest thing in the world. When I opened up a comic book, you know, as a kid, the best ones were the ones just like that you weren't allowed to see, and that was like heavy metal for me. You know, you could sneak into your dad's office, take heavy metal, open it up. I would see naked aliens, you know, like gore. It was great. So I made Savage Circus kind of a throwback to the emotional stories of the 80s while keeping this, like, I really wanted the hard edge horror violence that could come through only a comic book like this. And
I think one of my notes was that it wasn't violent enough.
yeah, the first time I got that note too, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think I said double down on the man-eating giraffes.
Yeah, that one just keeps going up. Everyone loves that giraffe.
Yeah, no, it's the story. I just wanted to see people being eaten by animals.
That's the only reason I wrote it.
It's the quote I'm going to use now in all the marketing materials. Just so you're
Dylan
aware.
was talking about like the artist and the writer's responsibility. I was just like dreaming of like a hungry beaver or something, just gnawing through her throat.
Oh yeah. I just read a crazy story about a beaver that killed a guy, just like that.
Sequel to Savage Circus, right there. We already got a number 2.
Ripped from the headlines.
It's prophetic.
Yeah, I hope not.
George, I want to talk a bit about. Sorry, that's so perfect. I want to talk a bit about both, not just Cold Dead War, but also The Rise, and how working on both of those properties has been, because it's. I don't want to use the word challenging, but it's definitely incredible that you're able to delineate between two different zombie worlds that have their own distinct rules, but also have moments where they can work together and be complementary. And talk through that a bit. I want to hear from your point of view how that's been.
So, well, you know, it's actually been relatively challenging, but once I kind of wrap my head around the fact that the common thread is the time period, you know, what I love about both projects is the fact that they're both kind of set against an alternative history, right? And so by being able to do that and dive into actual historical events and then kind of twist those around for the purposes of these stories and kind of inject a lot of things from both of these zombie worlds into a history that most people know about, that a lot of people are still walking around who were part of, and that, you know, most people have read about or learned. It's been a trip, man. It's been a lot of fun. And you know, I think that anytime you've got sort of two things that potentially parallel each other in a kind of a slip, it becomes a little bit of a slippery slope. But you know, I think it goes back to source material too. I mean, and what you were talking about earlier about the heavy metal brand, David, you know, I mean, the heavy metal brand has survived 50 years plus, you know, and the legacy that, you know, there's Romero has survived more than 50 years as well. We've survived the Vietnam War. We've survived everything since then. And so there's so much relevance. And, you know, there's a lot of cyclical themes throughout society through, you know, from back before both of these brands became recognizable. And, you know, I think that was kind of the thread that I grabbed onto. is that it's easier to delineate if you can make them relatable to your readers. And the best way to make both of these stories, I think, relatable to the readers is to use that alternative kind of history. So I think that was the thread that I grabbed onto and just kind of ran with. And it's been a lot of fun. Does that answer your question, or am I just rambling because I sound like
No. I mean, you can ramble all day, so that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that at all.
For the record, your rambling is very coherent.
Yeah.
My rambling
Using big words and everything. Very intelligent rambling.
good. All right then.
David, what do you think, since on the heavy metal side, you've been knee deep in both projects, kind of directing them and making sure that each of the ethoses really hit the boxes that we at heavy metal want to make sure they hit. So how's that been from your side?
I mean, it's wonderful working with George. One of the things that I always think about when it comes to dealing with something that's as fantastical as zombies, for example, is making sure that you ground it as much as you can to reality. It's just like working with Chris Nolan on the Batman movies, and that was really about how do we explain that a guy in a bat suit, who's going to dedicate his life to fighting crime, could actually exist. Or even like the Joker. I mean, lots of conversations of how do you explain a guy wearing makeup, and so where we looked was the punk rock era on St. Mark's in the 70s, and where people were wearing, creating their own uniforms, essentially. And so you'll see in the movie that, and just as in the real world, they would wear their outfit the same, leather jacket with studs and boots and whatnot, and they wear it day after day after day. So in the movie, you'll see actually Joker's clothes starting to get deteriorated over time because he's wearing it over and over. So much of it is grounded in trying to take something that's so fantastical and bringing it into the to make it feel that that person can actually exist, this world can actually exist. So that's kind of the approach that I take with a lot of our, everything that we do. And we're in the greatest genres right now, right? I mean, I've had my day in the superhero world, but now, with science fiction, fantasy, and horror, I mean, it's just a huge playground. So again, those are one of the things that with Brendan, he has a guy who's the lead is he's grounded by World War II. So and really, and I was working with him on making sure that we're accurate, right, on even the weapons and et cetera, and even and trying to get the lingo, because we want to, make sure that everything feels, Dylan is just, he's did a really deep dive deeper than I would even have gone with understanding the world of Vikings, and then, even the language, right? So
frankly, I can't get out. So,
but the point is that the what you've done is you created all this texture. You created this texture and you make it feel that it's tangible, and there's real material, that you can touch it. And so that's what I enjoy of working with all of you guys, is being able to push our storytelling to where we can make it feel that it's immersive for our readers and really give them that experience. So you guys are all doing a great job.
Thank you, David. Yeah. I love it.
Now I feel good. Now I feel ready to work.
I know. Well, I do see it in Dylan's, because I just read your Sun Eater, and Dylan's world is like this, such a fantastical world, but every single detail and rule stays the same throughout each episode, which gives it a really lived-in feeling, which I think that's what David's talking about, where it just came off, it feels authentic then.
Yeah, and also I remember when we first started taking Dylan's, helping to translate it from his script into the comic, and then and it kind of went off the rails. And then we had a call, and then and Dylan really wanted the opening scene of a guy cutting off his leg, and I was like, yeah, we need to go back to that. We need, because that is startling. Yeah, it's like the
it is definitely startling. When I saw that page, I was like, oh, okay, I know
It's
where we're
one of
going.
yeah.
The panel's awesome.
Panel.
Yeah. So imagine, what comic book has the first page of a guy cutting off his leg? Yeah. Only a heavy metal
everyone's
comic.
thinking like, I need to cut someone's leg off in their comic.
Like, damn it.
No. Brendan just has people, animals eating their legs. But,
Exactly.
Yeah,
And head.
yeah. I want Brendan to write an animal death in at least in my comic now. I want some crazy. Can I request a badger or something, or like a penguin?
No, you got to go to Dan for badgers.
Yeah, I'm starting to see
Badger
a theme, right? I'm starting to see a theme because George's stuff is right. I mean, it's all people eating limbs too. So
We all need to put like some leg violence in our stuff now.
I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a crossover here with George's people eating people versus Brendan's animal eating people.
Oh shit!
Zombie animals. I'm in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Are
cool.
all of us obsessed with dismemberment to some degree? It seems like that's a common.
No.
Dan, do you have cannibalism in yours?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I mean,
In
somewhere.
Fishkill, I thought in the sewers or something.
Well,
I wanted to see if anyone's eaten anyone in his.
Someone has to eat someone in Moonlake.
yeah, Moonlake.
Moonlake. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Dan, talk a little bit about Moonlake, because when we started talking about it, I don't know, maybe like almost a year ago now, right? Pretty close to that. We what I remember you showing it to me as you were like, this was like my homage to heavy metal when you were creating it. And when I read it for the first time, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And now we have volume 1 coming out this summer. And every time we've talked about Brooklyn Gladiator and Fishkill, but I want to hear your point of view as to what compelled you to make Moonlake, which is this anthology of like horror stories.
What compelled me? Heavy Metal the movie. That's what compelled me, man. I was 10 years old, and I went to my brother's comic book collection. I was like, what can I think I'm gonna start getting into comic books. And I grabbed Heavy Metal magazine because it was oversized, and I was like, this probably has, big pictures in it. And those pictures, as you guys know, shook me to the core. And then I was not old enough. And Moonlake is an homage to everything I was not supposed to see when I was a kid. Everything I stayed up late to watch. I mean, that's it. And so Heavy Metal the movie, I was like, I had back in the day, I had HBO, just the one cable channel. We'd like pull like a Frankenstein switch and be like, and then it would be HBO, and I would just watch Fraggle Rock over and over and over again, and Heavy Metal the movie was on all the time, and I just watched that so much, and it really had just a huge effect on me. And the reason I loved it was because it's an anthology, it's an anthology kind of feel, and it's Twilight Zone, but the Lochnar, man, the narrator that weaves his way through all the stories, I was like, I want to do that. I love that idea where all the stories seem like their own little separate puzzle pieces, but no, they all come together to make one big painting. And so Moonlake, my Lochnar is the man in the moon. He's like Hitchcock on acid, he's been abducted and he's in the moon, and he's forced to be a host of the Moonlake show, where he tells about all the stories from Moonlake, from prehistoric times into the future, and his audience is the gray aliens who sit there and watch stories. And so there are characters that show up in one story will show up in a later story, and so you start to realize, these are actually all woven together. And when you say, yeah, let's ground our zombies, I was like, you know what, this is I'm turning the dial up on this, on everything. I have Cave Girl and Z-Rex, which is a zombie Tyrannosaurus Rex. Those are my
Z-Rex.
Yeah. And we have one of my favorite characters is a Sasquatch with the personality of like Hunter S. Thompson, and he's like and he's fighting alongside Cave Girl, and so you have this that I think about that, and that's like Ben and Jerry's. It's all just mixed together, and there's stories in it that are hysterical, there's stories in it that are super creepy, and everything in between. And honestly, when I was at my first Comic-Con, when I did Moonlake, and I'm signing for it, and oh man, it's making me a little misty. I walked over to the heavy metal booth, and I signed my Moonlake, and I handed it to them, and I said, this is an homage to you guys. I want you to have this. And they've been letting me squat at their booth for the last 10 years, man. whether I've had a movie to push or just my comic book or what, and just to be able to that 10-year-old kid that started out just reaching up for the heavy metal magazine is just so happy right now to be working with you guys.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you, man. It's yeah. So we're looking forward to the your turn of the lighter side of storytelling with is it Live Fish and Brooklyn Guardians and Brooklyn Guardians maybe.
Happy Fish
comedies, right?
And Brooklyn Empath.
I like Brooklyn Empath. That sounds like that's the hero.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'll start writing right now.
So guys, we have about 5 or so more minutes, and I wanted to quickly touch base, kind of on a similar thread, but kind of going around the room. What does it mean to each of you that heavy metal has a 300th issue coming out and is able to kind of sustain and endure during the past 45, 50 years, and now turning into this new chapter where we hope to bring back some of that same glory that you were just talking about, Dan. And I'll start with you, but like, what does it mean to have 3,000 plus pages of this brand out in the world?
Well, history is repeating itself, man. I mean, it feels like the 60s all over again, and this is the heavy metal was birthed out of that. And so I feel like what a perfect voice. I mean, George said it. I mean, it was just it's just the perfect publisher to be with right now, because you can, you guys aren't going to, you guys are going to push us. You're not going to censor us. And there's so much censoring going on right now. It just seems like a lovely playground to be in.
Appreciate that. Brendan.
Yeah. I was just shocked you guys were only on 300. It feels like heavy metal's been around for damn near ever, When you said 300, I was surprised.
That. No, they're not supposed to know it goes longer.
Yeah.
We have to keep.
No, because the whole time I've been alive, heavy metal's been like a big part of it, from like Fire and Ice, the movie, heavy metal, obviously. It's always been a big like obelisk to comic books there for me. And through COVID, obviously, heavy metal's been such a good job. I think we've been working more, me, David, and Matt. I've been on the phone with you like 30 times a week. I've been doing more for heavy metal now during this virus than we did before. We got the podcast going, paneling. It's been awesome. It's been nonstop, which I think is really cool. You guys have not slowed down at all. And just excited to be working for you guys. I love it. I'm going to move in.
Listen, I mean, if anyone can move in, it would be you and George, who I know can fire up great steaks. You know, and that's really that's my baseline is who's making.
I'll just be grilling in the back of heavy metal. I'll be the cook.
George, what about you?
Man, you know, for me, growing up, there were three things that represented sort of my creative side being born, right? Like there was my dad and his stuff, there was Dungeons and Dragons, and there was heavy metal, right? So, and all of it I kept like in a Foot Locker, locked, like in the woods. You know what I mean? And it's survived and it's sustained itself, not only as a brand, but what that brand represents to me, us, all of us in this generation, and what it's going to represent moving forward for the next 100 years. I think is going to be that same. Films used to be dangerous, comics used to be dangerous, writing used to be dangerous, and it needs to stay that way. And you know, with regard to where you know Romero Pictures is going for the next 100 years, and where heavy metal is going for the next 100, there couldn't be a better marriage. You know, Romero should have been. You know, I tried to get my dad to work with heavy metal a lot when I was young, but there was more of a delineation between horror and sci-fi back then. And you know, it's like my heart is full over this whole partnership and everything we're doing. You know, it's I couldn't be happier creatively working with anybody else in my entire career. It's an honor.
Appreciate that, George. I feel the same way.
Same here.
I wish we had the. I now, for the first time, understand the awkwardness of watching any of the Tonight shows where they're at home without a crowd. Because right there, it should have been a great like cheering moment. Around us.
Drop
we
it
that in
post.
later. Yeah.
Dylan, how about you? What's it? I mean, again, maybe you're not sure what heavy metal is because you're so young now. So I don't know if you need
I'm
to.
13 again.
Yeah.
Well, when I start growing armpit hair, it might be because of heavy metal. Actually.
So you discovered heavy metal last year, then?
Yeah, exactly. It was my first thing. I also found it in Brendan's dad's office.
Talk to him about that.
Damn.
You know, I think that it being on 300 is obviously a major milestone, but I think because kind of what we were all talking about earlier, I think it's a little bit testament to the fact that heavy metal is really more of an idea. It's more of a kind of like a scout consciousness for comics, right? Like if we were a battalion, we would be the forward scouts, searching out and kind of writing down our ideas and bringing them back. And I think that like the fact that heavy metal is at 300 is testament to the readers kind of feeling the same way, that this is their go-to for comics on the edge, that are right there, that are kind of looking for new things. They're trying things that are interesting and weird and diverse. And I think that like, here's to 300 more, frankly. I feel like it's going to keep going because of that. When it transcends the fact that it's just good content when you read it, but that it aligns itself with the mentality of readers, it aligns itself with a mentality of writers, artists, and creatives in general, I think that's when you have something that's really permanent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. David, I'm gonna end it on you because I want to know what your perspective is coming from the guy who had to shepherd Batman when no one cared about Batman. What is it like to look at Heavy Metal 300 where it kind of went through a similar lull phase, and now coming out of the other side of that, what sort of similarities to things that you've worked on in the past do you see, and how does that excite you for what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, it's I would say that the most exciting thing for me is the fact that that you and I are working on this as partners, and I don't have the roadblocks that I've had to deal with working at DC Warner for over 16 and a half years, building the DC properties across all the stuff, and then going same with Hasbro, and then building the Transformers universe and the recent turn and change for the direction, because they're so resistant to change and taking risk. And so I was always pushing and pushing and pushing. And so here, Matt is very like-minded. And so it's kind of like a kinship, brotherhood, that we are willing to take those risks and take those chances. So that to me is the one of the greatest things. It's almost like all that hard work has led me to heavy metal. And then when it comes to the issue 300, what I love about it is because I've always dealt with legacy brands and building them into to become relevant to the current populace, is we do pay respect in our issue 300, right? So we pay respect to the legacy. So we have an unpublished Mobius, we have Von Bodie, and unpublished unpublished Von Bodie that Mark also contributed to. So again, really starting to make sure that we pay respect to the people who initiated heavy metal, but then we're bringing in new voices. And to everybody's point, it's a lot of the stories are uneasy, and to Dan, and maybe you shouldn't be reading this because it's like or to George's thing that it's dangerous. So all of those things we're really, I feel excited that we're reinvigorating what heavy metal meant to us, and you guys all share that same passion. And that's the one thing that I think all of us have, is that we have that shared passion, that love for what it meant to us and what it represented. So now we're doing it again. So.
We're this close.
Right. No,
the pizza man music. No, anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm just happy that to be able to be working with all you guys, man. I mean, it's just, you guys are all contributing such amazing stuff, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. And
yeah,
my only thing is, it's a blessing to find people that put art first and profit second. And as important as it is, and I always say this, important as it is to be successful both creatively and fiscally, it's more important that you have integrity with your art. And I think a lot of times over the last few decades, those lines have been blurred a little bit too much. And for me, at least with David, and something that I feel like that I'm proudest of it in our 8 months bringing this brand, shepherding this brand, we've been able to attract people that have that mentality where being successful doesn't just mean a huge paycheck, but it means creating something that changes a generation.
And also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to get in real quick, is that I feel that everybody that we're talking, on this panel right now, I see it as a long-term relationship. Once you're done with stories, I expect you guys to keep on writing and coming up with the more stories, because all of you guys have a lot of creative ideas and creative stories and thoughts. And of course, Dan just seems to just throw out tons and tons and tons of, you probably have so many stories in your head that you still want to tell. So we welcome it.
The overlord
Brendan's going to get eaten by a giraffe probably in the next 3 months.
Gonna get caught in the zoo. As soon as COVID's over, I'm in the zoo again.
But to David's point, we want to build that same community that heavy metal had when it first came out, where it was the Mobiuses, and it was the Corbins, and it was the Drulets, and it was all of these guys contributing in new ways and different ways, collaborating, doing something different from one issue to another, from one year to another, to keep it fresh and to keep it engaging, but with the same leaders, the same generals telling those stories. And that's how we feel about all of you guys. And I couldn't be more excited about what the next 100 years have, because Brendan and or Dan will figure out a way to cryo sleep us, and then we'll just wake up with giraffes and fish kills and everything around us.
As long as heavy metal's still around, I'll be around.
Yeah,
It'll be good. It keeps me young.
Well, guys, thanks so much for this. This is Heavy Metal, Forging the Future of Genre, and hope everybody's enjoying their YouTube San Diego Comic-Con experience. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We are now kicking off Heavy Metal's graphic audio podcast, Wonderwork, here at San Diego Comic-Con 2020. Please enjoy.
Since the invention of fire, man has spun stories of gods and monsters.
From a million years in the future, Heavy Metal presents Wonderwork.
What the fuck do you mean we're going for a ride?
Someone took a wrecking ball to this place.
And then I saw it. My beautiful body, made by her kind.
Welcome to Wonderwork, a twisted anthology podcast for people who like their stories dripping in orc blood, basted in starship fuel, and lathered in some kind of disgusting black goo.
I think I have the perfect story for a group such as yourselves.
Brought to you in immersive graphic audio. I'm your host, but instead of worrying about who I am, worry about when I am. A million years in the future.
The world had become fully automated and centrally connected to a mainframe.
Stay sharp, team. We're approaching the anomaly.
A battle it will be. They will not be so lucky this time.
I'm not afraid of you. Come on.
Each week we'll journey to an all-new world for an original, pulse-pounding tale set in the realms of science fiction, fantasy, and horror.
Creatures, once thought made up, suddenly allowed to thrive.
A squad of marauders clustered around him, chopping and slashing in a flurry. That's when I saw him. The damn freak. The shaman.
This isn't going to end well.
Wonderwork begins with new tales August 2020. Available wherever one finds podcasts in the 21st century.
We are one now.